Welcome back, Wogglers. So we've been talking about blueprints for the past couple of days, and so now I'm going to share just a couple of tips and tricks, things that I've learned along the way that are really helpful when it comes to building blueprints. If you found this video and you want to build a blueprint from scratch, I highly recommend going back and watching all of our blueprint videos. This video is more just kind of like you've built a blueprint and you might be having some issues here and there. Here are some tips and tricks that might help. One of the biggest things that I can actually say about blueprints is very, very useful when you have a set process. If your process is a little more loosey-goosey, blueprints might not be the right solution for you. Blueprints really kind of puts those guardrails in so your average user can only do certain things at certain times. I have built blueprints for clients before in which they want everything to be very set in a very specific process, but the fact of the matter is their staff is so small that everybody's kind of doing everything, and when we segregated out employees to specific tasks, they would get stuck along the way. So that's something to really think about. One of the things that we employed in that scenario was the ability to assign these transition buttons not just to one single user, but to groups. And what's nice about that is when you're creating these groups, let's see, well, I don't have any groups available in this demo one, but when you're creating a group, you can add one user to multiple groups. And then as your company is growing and you're hiring more people, then you can add them to the groups that are appropriate, and they will have those permissions specifically. So that way, if one person does 4 jobs, then they'll have the ability to do all of those things throughout the blueprint process, but your blueprint is already built for more users with more specified jobs. So that's one of the tips and tricks that you can use with the blueprints. Another tip and trick is, for example, if your process has a break in it somewhere, has a fork. So let's take our example process here. So in our pretend company, we are building out itineraries and booking travel plans for groups. So let's say, for example, when we research the destination and we choose the destination, if the destination that's chosen by the client is international, there's a couple of other steps that we have to do before we can get down to building the itinerary and getting the deposit. For example, we have to make sure they're collecting information for their visas and any other traveling internationally types of activities that you need to do that you don't need to do when you're traveling locally. What we can do there is we can add criteria to these particular transition buttons. So for the normal pathway, you can say the destination requirements, doesn't contain international, or wherever it is, whatever field captures that information, you can put that criteria here. And then let's say, for example, we've got some other stages. It's obviously not going to be close loss, but you'll probably have other stages that you've already built for your process, right? And then you can have another button that is Destination International. And then the criteria on this button, we can have be the opposite of Destination Chosen. Let's see, contains international. So there we go. And the great thing about having those criteria and having those forks in your process and putting the criteria around those buttons is the user will only see the appropriate button based off of the fields they've already filled out in your process. So it won't get confusing by having 6 buttons all across the way when you're looking at it and they have to try and figure out which one they should choose. Only the correct buttons for the process that their deal is made up to be will show the buttons available to them. So that's a couple of tips and tricks that I've got available to you, and I am hoping to see you on the next video. Woggle woggle.